Hi, everyone. Welcome to AgentCFO podcast, another episode now with Chris Ortega. If you're working in finance and if you use LinkedIn and if you go to conferences, I'm sure you would have met or Chris. Chris is a very popular guy, and I really like him. I like his work because the impact he created across CFO office is immense. His ideas, his propagating of ideas to helping other people, and he does all this voluntarily. I still get surprised how he does all this work by himself. And he runs a big company. He runs Fresh FP&A, which helps the CFO office of various companies across the world. We'll ask him how he does all this work and still has time to go to gym and be in perfect shape. I think this is a great segue.
Man, thank you for the great introduction, dude. It's always getting some time spending with you, man. You are one of my favorite people. I love everything that you're doing at ChatFin and just being a great voice in the technology space, helping the office of the CFO. And you're just a great friend of mine, too, man. So looking forward to this conversation.
And I really love the network that we have built. It's not just
Yeah.
you, me, Chris. There are a lot of other people. We can always reach out to them and we can always ask a question or say, hey, can I get an introduction? And these people are willing to do, right? I think I really
100%.
like this finance network we have built probably across the world right now. So that's the amazing thing. And I was at one of your AICPA, that marathon session that you do every
Yeah.
time, talking about how to use AI in finance process. And it's not about what you say, it's how excited people are to be in that session. Even end of the session, they're all excited. They only talk about your session, about the things that they have learned. And it's also the confidence that you give
Yeah.
them that they can do this. That's amazing. And what's your process of building that whole the 2.5 hour session?
Yeah, so honestly, it's not just it's a complete team effort. I do that with Wesley Hartman. He's more of the technical side for accounting. So you've got like me who's living and breathing in the office of the CFO, finance, accounting, everything that comes to the finance organization. He's like the IT counterpart. So it's a great like tag team session that we do because I speak to all the finance, the CFOs, the finance professionals. He comes in from the technology aspect of it. So it's like a nice like balance out. But we've done this at the AICPA CFO conference. We've also done it at Engage. Every year is always something different we're talking about.
Sure.
Last year, we dove deep into ChatGPT. We dove deep into Gemini. We looked at Copilot. This year, we really had a focus on Gemini, Copilot, ChatGPT, and we introduced Claude and just all the advancement that really happens around it. And for me, I always love this session because it's meeting people on where they're at. Early stage, they still haven't used this thing to we have people in the session that are doing some more of the advanced stuff. So the whole intention is walking them across the entire journey, right?
That's right.
And
Yeah.
that 2.5 hours ended up being close to 3 hours. We have people locked in. It was right before the conference. We always get people to stay over, and it was less about the theory, right? We're not talking about what this is. We were opening up laptops, getting into prompts. We were doing the work, right? And just having people actually work for themselves. Everybody was in teams working on it. So it's super collaborative, super informative, and like directly applicable and practical to what a CFO is going to be doing in their job. So they get a lot of excited for it. And I love doing it.
Right. And Chris, I think you might have observed this right now in the market and among the finance users. Everyone is so excited to build,
Yes.
right? It actually, once you get into it, like you're vibe coding, you're building something, it's the fun of building because as a non-technical user, you never had that chance before. And now you can build this whole applications, you can deploy them, you can start using it. And I feel like it's a superpower for particularly for smaller to mid-sized companies because you don't have resources now. You know what needs to be done, but you don't have resources to do it. But now
Hmm.
probably on a weekend or like late night, you can just sit on it for a few hours and you can get some of those automations done. That seems to be very exciting for finance professionals. And do you see that
Oh,
among all the
100%,
CFOs?
man.
Yeah.
100%. I think this I hold on to what you said around vibe coding. Think about as a CFO's accounting, finance, whatever profession that you're in and you're watching this, right? We never thought it'll be a day where we can actually vibe code stuff. You know what I'm saying? And we're talking about quantitative numbers. We're talking about debits and credits. We're talking about US GAAP. We're talking about IFRS. We're talking about budgeting, forecasting. Like these are very like technical, almost like scientific ways of doing things that we kind of come across from the finance perspective. And then now you introduce this whole opportunity for you just to vibe. That's what I call it. And it's whether you're vibe prompting, I think that's probably more what finance people do, or vibe coding, but you find yourself in a vibe. And I do this every day, man. And it creates a opportunity for you to be in finance and be in a very structured, a debit has to equal a credit. You have to have this kind of accuracy. You know, all this language and jargon that we know, and it gives us a time to be creative, right? When you are creative in accounting or finance, most of the time you go to jail. Like if you're doing some creative stuff in those areas, you're probably going to jail. IFRS language, or I'm looking at tax at a locality perspective. Like it gives us that ability to take our quantitative skill sets and mindsets, but actually be creative in how we apply the execution and delivery on that, which is to me, whether you're vibe coding or you're vibe prompting, just catch a vibe.
That's right. Yeah. So why finance is one of the term we came up with, and I think we should have registered it. But basically, once you start vibing about finance, I think it's limitless, right? I mean,
Yes.
you can achieve a really good standard scale of doing things and executing them. One of the example, and I always think about if you're giving your data to one of the agent for analytics purposes and asking, hey, look at my P&L and give me insights where I can improve. It'll give you a set of improvements. You go through them and you will find probably 2 or 3 which you haven't done. Now, my question is, once we do all the recommendations what AI gave you, and then you next time you ask, it's going to give the same question, same response, right? You have already covered it. So is it going to be a ceiling with the analytics that are provided by AI, that all the insights till some point it is good, and that point I think is pretty soon, because we're going to do all those improvements that it's going to suggest, and from then I think it gets stagnated, right? Probably that is when the whole human creativity
100%.
and analytical thinking that comes in. That's where we underestimate and overestimate the AI capabilities. I think we are overestimating the capabilities in a very short
Yes.
term, but in the long term, probably it's the other way. I think we're underestimating in the short term. We're actually overestimating in the long term. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think I'm in a mixed piece on it, because I think there's like use case, and we'll go into this, we'll go into the details on it. But for me, when I look at like the quantitative side of a CFO of what I do, right? And I'm talking specifically like ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, and Claude, right? I think those are the tools universally at Fresh FP&A. All 35 of my teammates globally, they all have license to all those. We leverage them not only internally in my business, but with clients as well too. I think you got to look at it from a lens. If you look at it, say the quantitative aspects of all 4 of those tools, are we underestimating or overestimating? I 100% agree with all collectively of those tools, besides one. I'll talk about that. We are overestimating what it can do from a quantifiable perspective, right? Like you can load a model into one of these tools, and yeah, it'll give you what it thinks it should do. But where it's not going to be able to give you that information in like the style, the way that you want to look at it. Once you start getting into complexity with it, and like you want data sets to refresh, it is, I don't think we're at that stage for at least Gemini, ChatGPT, and Copilot to have that level of like quantifiable, right? So quantifiable, I think in finance, we're overestimating. Now, in the qualitative side, which I think is more of like, hey, the writing, the processes, the procedures, the productivity side of me as a CFO, hugely, I think it's underestimated in all of those tools, how valuable that they are, right? Like, I mean, right now, like the level of time and energy from an admin perspective that it saves me on researching and policies and writing emails, and even with my team, like when we're using Copilot to record meetings, we actually change the way we talk so the transcription has the meetings in there and it has the action items at the end, and we can take that transcription, we load it into Power Automate, it creates the summarized email what we want, we look at it, we give our blessing on it, and Power Automate sends that email. So I think that's the way to look at it. I think on the quantifiable side, particularly for a finance or CFO professional, we're overestimating the capabilities of what that can do. But on the qualitative side, the productivity, the processes, that I think we're 100% underestimating how these tools can be significantly valuable from a productivity perspective. But also, it gets me out of the things that I don't want to do. I
That's
don't
right.
want to, here's another. I'll give a real life example of where people are probably dealing with this. If you open up your Outlook, your Gmail, whatever email client you have right now, I guarantee you've got that email sitting in your inbox that's like 4 paragraphs, and you're like, I don't have time to read this, man. Like, I'm not going to go through this, try to summarize it. Let me run this through any of those tools. Let me make sure my prompt is good and it gives me everything I need to know, right? Multiply that by like every day that you're working over an entire year, guarantee savings for you because you get to exactly where you need to go. So I think that's my response on it, man. I that's how I feel. I think where we're at.
That's right. We at ChatFin, we see that every day. We help the CFO teams in mid to large companies in taking a lot of our manual activity and let AI agents do it. It could be from your month-end close activities, your AP, AR, tax, treasury. There are immense amount of manual work that goes in there. And like all those ERPs that are there in the world and the complexities of them, working around them, even posting a journal entry, it's so manual work to do it. It's just a complication. I mean, you could have automated it with some tool, but there's still some manual work left in there because the sheer number of variations that happens. Now, I think AI can really help, and that's what we are doing. And that's where we see when this work that people don't want to do it is now being able to handle with AI. And that's the top priority for a lot of companies. And that's how it surfaces as well, right? Someone says, probably we should automate our JE submission or our accruals because we don't want to do it.
Yep. And I,
And
I wanna I wanna build on that because I think this is where ChatFin does a really great job, and this is a huge distinction, right? When I just talked about that on the quantitative side and the analysis side, we're overestimated there.
that's right.
The wins for CFOs and finance professionals, that if you want to have it, you're not going to have an agentic AI that goes and produce a 6 month rolling cash flow forecast that has 99% accuracy, that takes in all these business things and scenarios and produces a very pretty cash flow 6 month plan for you, right? Like, if you think AI is at that and agents are at that place now in any of those tools or any of those software solutions to be able to do that, I haven't seen it yet, right? But on the manual stuff, that's where there is opportunity there, right? There is opportunity. I see it across a lot of different tools. Now, here's where it gets very like there's the path diverge, right? When you're talking about the common LMS tools, right? The ChatGPTs, the Geminis, the Claudes, the co-pilots of the world. I'm talking this lane, right? Like, that's not going to be, you're not going to load this journal entry information in there and be like, hey, load this, like, create this journal entry for me inside of my QuickBooks, NetSuite, Intact, Oracle system, right? You're not using those tools for that, right? And
That's
I
right.
think that's another overestimated on the quantifiable side of it that a lot of finance people think is like, oh yeah, I can load some data in ChatGPT and it'll give me the journal entries I need to do. It'll give you like, hey, here's the process and how to do it and like all that, but the execution of it is not going to come there. So this is where you got to look outside of those large language models, the LMS tools, and look into actually the platform tools. And this is where
Sure.
ChatFin is a win, right?
That's right.
No matter what ERP you're working in, whether you're a NetSuite, QuickBooks, whatever SMB mid enterprise ERP you're working with, whatever tools that you have, you're moving out to say, here's these manual things that I know the LMS tools can't integrate and do. The gap that ChatFin fills for you is coming into those systems and say, we can do that work. We
That's
can
right.
actually execute on the journal entries. You've got that prepaid marketing expense that you've been amortizing for the last 12 months. Why do you have a person doing that? Like, this is another tool to be able to do that. So I
That's
think
right.
to me, that's a common, I think, misunderstanding that a lot of and I talk to so many different finance and CFO and accounting professionals globally, and that's a common misconception is that on the quantifiable side, these traditional LMS tools are not going to do that. The best path for you is to say, here's the systems that we're using. Here's the manual low stuff that we're doing. How can we actually build inside of our solution to do these tasks to free up the people? But the last point I'll make around that is there always, always, always needs to be a human element of validation. Like, do not get to the point where these things are just automatically posting and nobody's reviewing it. And you
That's
get
right.
to the end of the month and you're like, why is depreciation $10 million? It's because you had this agent that did it. You have to have that human element, right?
You
But
can't
it's
put AI
also,
in jail, right? You can put
yeah,
instead you can put
right.
human in
So
the jail.
you have to have that human element of it, but it also is a balance, right? Having your high performers, high costly people, your strategic people in preparing journal entries, not value add, right? Having them review and get to 80% of the story and they only spend 10%, 20% of their time on that, value add.
And particularly, few of the nuances of using AI, and particularly as your the business is bigger from mid to large enterprise, is there's a context problem, right?
Yes.
How do you save? Because if it's a small company, it's one person, he can dump all his brain into it and can start building it. But as the company grows, there are specialized people, specialized processes. How do you get that context to make everything work perfectly? That's one. Second is, how do you make sure you're running that probably the thousandth time and you're getting the same result? You can't have an error just because AI assumed something differently this time. And the third is, how do we make sure that there is enough context even to do analytics? As an example, if you have inventory data and you're sitting in FP&A, you don't really know all the nuances of inventory, right? How do you even ask a question and get a meaningful answer on the inventory data without having that subject matter expertise in it? For that to happen, you need to add that context to that data for you to get a response, right? Now maybe you will surface something that can really help steer a conversation with leadership, right? So these are the three things we focused with ChatFin, is like, how do we make sure all these three are, people can use chat gpts, people can build stuff, but as the enterprise grows, this is what we usually offer.
And I love that, man. And I would just add, I think one of the biggest, in addition to what you said, the context that is so important. Here's the reality, right? Like, I love talking with you, man, because it's like we don't have to do no fluff. It ain't no like jargon. We just be real, right? Without the context that a lot of these traditional tools that you hear about, right? I call them the big four, right? ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Claude. Let's just say that's the big four.
Those are the
That's
new
the new
big
big four. That's
finance.
the new big four. That's the new big four in finance right now. That's the new big four, right?
Right.
Is the context that they have is a wealth and a mind of information that is like searching the internet. The context that it has is almost unlimited, right? But what it doesn't have is like the context and the application in a real life situation that's happened. You know what I mean? So like it can give you the journal entry to record depreciation and like know that in a software industry, here's how you should do it because it's searched this vast context element and atmosphere to find that information. But the context that people can bring to that, right, is that experience, and that's a value add that we will always have. We have that clarity. I remember posting depreciation entries and when I was in Big Four accounting and as an auditor. I remember when the first, 6 years of my career when I was in accounting and the CPA track doing this stuff, right? So you have this context element coupled with like real life practical experience of doing that. That is the combination. That's where I think ChatFin just thrives. And I love that you mentioned the context of it because you're getting that business acumen. Here's how we do things in the business, right? And here's how we did have a dedicated person that was only doing depreciation entries across 40 different entities across the globe and 80 different foreign exchange or 80 different currencies, but we still have that human element to couple with that piece of it. So that to me is like the game changer for AI, along with how you leverage it to bring in your practical, real life, I've been there, done that, know how to do it experience.
Right. Chris, how has your own way of thinking changed? Like, you run this big business operation, big company. How did things change now with AI? with these
Man,
agents? And
I love this mindset shift. I was talking about this at the AICPA CFO conference, and I talked about the mindset shift that I've had with AI in a different phase, right? So this is the best way to look at it. Let's look at pre-AI and let's look at post-AI, right? And I would say that kind of wheel for me was like pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. I think like that's like the best way that I can describe it. When I think about how I used to partner in the business, right? And like how that's changed for me now as a practitioner in a role to like actually leading that company and actually serving multiple clients across the globe. That mindset that I have was always our version of FP&A. We were financial partners and advisors. That's what FP&A meant to me. So when I
that's what
worked across,
FP&A means in Fresh FP&A?
yeah, that's exactly what it means in Fresh FP&A.
Oh,
Fresh
okay.
financial partners and advisors around it. But that mindset, when it came to the business, when it came to doing my work, I always had a financial partnership and an advising mindset, which meant, let me walk you through an example. Say, like a salesperson came to me and I'm having my weekly sales meeting because I want to know the pulse of the business. If I know the pulse of sales, I'm going to know the pulse of revenue. I'm going to know the pulse of cash. I'm going to know all these other things, right? And when that business partner would talk to me, I would always have a mindset of thinking about how I can financially model something. So if I'm sitting across from a salesperson, they say, Chris, man, I know our average deal size is $10,000, but you know what? Looking at these deals in our pipeline, we have a 25% close rate, but that's at 15,000. I wonder what the financial impact of that would be if our, close cycle is 90 days. What would be the impact of that in Q3, right? I would hear those conversations, and my mindset, being a financial partner and advisor, would always think about how can I financially model exactly what the business person just said, right? How can I model that from a financial perspective? A lot of times it's like, how do I open up Excel and model that, right? It was a very quantitative, how can I be a great finance partner? How can I advise you on that business decision? How can I model that to make it clear, concise, and easy for you to understand, right? That was that mindset. Now you look at it with post AI, right? Like now we're in the AI phase. Same sales and marketing example, right? Hey, Chris, like our average deal size is $10,000. I will, if it gets to 15, average deal size on this and that. My mindset is now no longer how do I think about opening up Excel and modeling that? How do I build my prompt around what they just said? So it went from financial, quantitative, how do I open up Excel? How do I build this? How do I write the formulas? How do I do all this to give a clear, concise, and easy to understand direction for this business person I'm working with? Quantitative, financial modeling mindset. To now, how do I think about more than just a model for this business? How do I think about the prompt to give me the context, what they're looking for, challenge that they have? How do I make this clear, concise, and a message and a strategy to give to them? So now they just don't know what the model means, but here's all the other business things for you to consider. So for me, that shift is like, that's how I think now. I think when I get communications from clients, right, whether it's tax, whether it's legal, whether it's no matter what I get from the business, I think about how do I write the most effective prompt to give me the information, coupled with my 20 plus years experience in working in finance and leadership, to now combine that to a strategy and a valued information that business person can have now, right?
Yeah.
Significant change. And the last point on that mindset shift, I wasn't taught that on the CPA exam. I didn't take a class on that. I didn't get a certificate that says, you have this, you completed your mindset shift, right? I didn't wake up one day and just be like, I need a new mindset shift. It was because I'm thinking about bringing value. The value to the business and we work with CEOs, owners, and founders. That's our primary ideal customer profile. That's who we work with. That's who we provide our fractional CFO and advisory services with. The number one thing in working with that audience that every person needs to hear right now, business people do not care about your financial technical skills.
That's
They
right.
don't care about it at all. They're like, cool, you've got all these certificates and you're a wizard at Excel or you're a wizard at this. They don't care about that. How can you take your skill set, provide value to me to take me from pain to productivity? How can
Sure.
you do that? Right? Now, financial modeling could be a portion of that, but also strategy, insights, recommendations, project management skill sets you can bring to it. That is way more valued add. And those skill sets, right? Producing a financial model or producing a strategy for a business to implement based on your experience, AI can do one of those.
That's right.
AI with you can really bring that value to the other one. So that to me has been those mindset shifts, man. And for me, that's just what I see. And I think people you see finance professionals and CFOs that are like they're too, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but they're too stuck on looking backwards and like resting on the skill sets and the value that they brought before to the business, which was scorekeeping, right? Like the value that they brought was like, I'll do a model to keep score, right?
That's right.
We got to move to this valued advisor perspective. Like, how are we producing value in the business? And how are we helping the business move forward? And how are we have that seat at the table to help guide the business? Not like, here's what our updates were for actuals compared to our forecast. Cool. What are we going to do about that? That to me is like a key differentiator. And that financial modeling to prompting mindset, huge shift.
That's right. Chris, if you're talking about mid to large companies, and if you're talking about a function like FP&A, their primary function is to generate forecasts, generate, like
Financial
budget,
planning,
like planning analysis, right? What are the use cases? And I'm not talking about small SMBs, but mid to large corporations. Where do you think AIs or AI agents will really help FP&A process?
Yeah, the number two areas that I've seen it, and this is again, the focus of this is where I've seen these AI successful use cases in FP&A. It's not in the big four, right? It's actually inside of those tools. So whether you're like NetSuite or QuickBooks or Planful or Profix or OneStream, whatever technology solution that you have, the biggest value add that I've seen it is on the prescriptive and predictive forecasting side of it, right? Because inside of these tools, it's going to have all that actual performance. You have that tactical data in there. You have all those journal entries. Now, how can you A/B test budgeting and forecasting, right? Here's the thing. AI can be your A test where it's like, hey, here's the last 6 months. Here's all the operational data. Here's all the context. I can feed as much context into this model. Produce for me the next forecast for the next 6 months of this business based on all this context I gave you, right? Use the industry standard forecasting methodology, take your scientific stuff in there, give me deviations, give me forecast errors, give me all that stuff. Produce a forecast, revenue, cash, expenses for the next 6 months of this business, right?
Right.
That's your A test.
Right.
Your B test is go into the tried and true methods. Sometimes it's like last 3 months and run rate, right? But go into your own, you take your practical way and how you did it, how you've done a forecast, things that you consider, sensitivities that you do. Now you've got a B model, right?
That's right.
And when you have the gold standard of any testing in anything is A/B testing, right? Now you've got your AI driven prescriptive model for revenue for the next 6 months based on all this context that you gave it. And you got your CFO 20 plus years. I've seen multiple businesses. I know the seasonality. I had the conversation with sales and I see all of these things that could potentially happen. And here's what my forecast is going to be. And now, as the actual performance comes up, you've got an A/B test to see where you're at, right? You're like, man, my AI forecast was really spot on, or my human-driven forecast in my B test was a little bit more conservative here, and we got upside. That's where I've seen it be hugely successful. And that use case does not live in ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Claude. I use that as a disclaimer because Claude, from a quantifiable perspective, in our use cases we've seen, very, very good for the quantifiable sides of finance to produce a nice prescriptive forecast. So that would be one. And that's a project that we set up and we leverage. And that's how we A/B test. We A/B test prescriptive and predictive forecasting with Claude because we set up projects, we set the context up for it to do that. So that's really for FP&A professionals where I see like the biggest use case, and it's the human AI element to it, right? It's
That's
like
right.
your experience, your years of experience, your knowledge, your partnership, your relationship, all of that fit into it, along with a very informed AI model. And now you've got two paths to kind of measure against. That's a game changer.
And I think now, just an open question to you, Chris. You work with a lot of vendors, a lot of software companies, from small to really large companies, right?
Yeah.
And now everyone is opening up. Not everyone is there, but they started to open up to integrate with external agents like Claude. So basically, this agent can go through this software platform and capture any data it wants and then bring it. How do you think that this ecosystem will evolve when we have financial software, we have layers and layers of data, we have hierarchies, we have invoices, all this stuff, and now we're giving access to agent? I'm not asking a cybersecurity question. I'm asking more about how do you think this will evolve into this ecosystem will evolve?
Out of the big four AI tools that I mentioned, I think Claude is probably the furthest along of that integration agentic aspect of it
For now.
for now, right?
Yes.
I think, Microsoft, and again, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I think with Copilot, probably the second person, because Copilot's already integrated inside of those Excel models, inside of the Power BI instance for clients. It's probably second. With ChatGPT, I probably think ChatGPT is going to be more open to integration with all these various tools. But still, right? Like, I look at it, even the big four of the AI tools looking at that, right? It's just another data set for them, right? It's another context element that they have that's no longer the internet and the vast wad of data. Now you're actually incorporating it in their systems. So you're still going to need that human element, right? Because it has no baseline. You can connect Claude to anybody's, QuickBooks, and it has like Claude for QuickBooks, and it's a connection to it. I mixed bag on that one. I think it's a good step in the right direction, but I still think it needs a lot of work. But you still have to provide it that human element for it. Because looking at data to look at data, right, is great. But what does that mean for the business? And I think to your question, that's going to evolve. I think once as these big four, because right now, besides Claude, the big fours are kind of out of ERP data, right? Like it's, you can't connect ChatGPT to your D365 or your NetSuite or your QuickBooks, right? Like you can't make that direct connection yet. Same thing for Gemini, right? So a lot of those LMS tools, you can't really leverage the full power of those on your own data. But as integrations open up and it directly connects to there, I just think it creates another layer of context that the data has, but it still needs to know what it is, right? Which I think is a huge value add. But you're talking about Google, you're talking about Microsoft, you're talking about OpenAI, you're talking about Claude, right? You're talking about these tools that here's what it all boils down to, where I think that path will open up once they figure out how to like collectively monetize that from a data perspective. I think you'll start seeing that, yeah, we'll play a little bit more with these tools, right?
That's right.
But Claude, for me, man, Claude, if you're listening to this and you're like, Chris, love the conversation, you guys are like knocking it out the park, but like which one of the big four, Chris, should I start with in the quantifiable side and like the technical side of what I'm doing? 100% Claude. Like start there.
I just want to add nuance to what you said, right? There are various levels of using AI, because when you talk about, okay, I'm building as a CFO, I'm building stuff, there are various CFOs of different sizes looking at that and saying, should I start building right now so that my company will, can start using AI? Or so these are all what platform should I use? So these are all the questions that usually comes to the mind. So just want to clarify, right? SMBs, I think you should use any of the big four tools and start building. It'll really help. If you're in mid to large enterprise, again, the amount of efficiency you get by building is actually less, and sometimes it's negative. One of my buddy works in really large corporations in technical department, and now everyone is vibe coding within the company various applications and is coming to him to deploy those. But he's a gatekeeper, and he has to be, because his question is, everyone builds it. It could be the VP of finance building it, could be a manager coming and building it. Did you test it enough? I will publish this. I will deploy this. If you haven't tested enough, and someone else in the company will start using it, and they will get the wrong numbers, who is going to take responsibility of it? So there is a downside of actually building. So that's why the nuanced approach is, if you're in a mid to large enterprise, there is a totally different strategy. You still have to use these big four for various other purposes for your emails. But if you're building complex applications, complex workflows, there's a different approach. You have to actually think through like a SDLC, like a software development lifecycle. You build something, you test it, you do the dev, you do the UAT, you give it to someone else to test it to make sure they cover all the edge cases. You can build a quick prototype or a quick application. It doesn't even look like a prototype. It looks like a full application within a day or two.
Yeah.
But all the edge cases that comes in, and we do that every day, right? So we know all the edge cases that comes in, which you haven't thought about. What if you find them once it is in production? Already the damage is done. So those are the things that needs to be considered when you're thinking in a large enterprise,
100%.
because the downside is a big financial impact or the business continuity problem.
Yeah, and I think always with that, I know you said cybersecurity wasn't the primary focus, but as a CFO, risk is always on my mind, man. You
Yeah.
always got to think about that, man. And I like, yes, it's exciting and you can have these tools in there, man, but there's a lot of risk if you don't understand like data you're loading into things. I've had CFOs told me that, yeah, man, like I used a free version of ChatGPT and I loaded in all these like legal contracts I was working on and I compared it to like our legal contracts and it spelled out verbatim exactly where the differences lie and what the language needs to be. And I'm like, they had no idea what they just exposed, a free model that is trained on the data you load that could be cross-referenced.
That's right.
They had no idea that they just did that, right?
Chris,
So
isn't even the $20 version still takes the data and trains you, right?
yeah, and you still have to check the box to say don't, train off of my data, right? Like train your models off of the data. Enterprise versions of it, as you get higher up in the licensing, it gives you more self-contained, your data stays protected, but you can still go research the stuff. So, before you deploy any of the big four AI tools in there, right? Like definitely I get CFOs access all the time. Like, Chris, if I wanna develop an AI strategy, and I'm like, you gotta think bigger than just what you want to do in finance, right? And I'm talking most small to medium sized businesses, they don't have like a dedicated CTO, CIO, CDO, chief data officer. And I'm like, look, if you want to move fast with AI, move it fast in your organization. If you want AI adoption to move further in your organization, make sure you bring that IT, that data, that technology governance with you. You'll move a lot further and you'll be able to identify a lot of these risks before it. But here's also like the reality of a lot of businesses and CFOs and finance professionals that managing teams right now. You have shadow IT in your organization 1,000% right now. You have people that are using these personal tools that are doing work for your business. You have exposure. It's just really assessing how do we put the guardrails in the sandbox for people to operate in these and leverage these tools, but how do you do it in a way that is protecting the business first? Right? Getting all this efficiency, getting out of the manual, the low value, high value stuff, all the stuff we talked about is great. But if you're putting a business at risk, huge downside to that. Because here's the reality. There is never going to be, and I maybe never, I should probably choose my word because there's a lot of crazy things going on. There's never going to be like a case where like the AI is the defendant. You know what I mean? It is going to be a person, right? It is going to be somebody responsible for something. And it's
Right.
going to be like, you're responsible for this, even though the AI did it.
Yeah.
AI is not going to be going to jail or like, for something that it did. You know what I mean? So you always have to think about that level of risk with it and, start with the AI for finance is an elephant right now for
Right.
people, right? You don't tackle an elephant by going at an elephant straight on. You tackle an elephant by looking at one leg at a time, right? So maybe your one leg is like, all right, I want to work with IT, data, or a provider to help me build a comprehensive AI strategy for my organization.
That's right.
Step
Yeah,
one,
that makes
right? That's
sense.
leg one, right? So that's the way to go about tackling that.
Right. One last question. We're going to record this again, probably in 6 to 12 months, right? Like, let's say 12 months. What do you think is going to happen in next 12 months? And if you're talking about April 30, 2026, how do you think AI in finance is going to be?
I think there's a path diversion right now, and we're gonna record this 12 months from now. This is what I'm
That's
banking
right.
on. I'm starting to really see in the finance application space itself a high prevalence of tools itself. So whether you're an ERP, whether you're budgeting planning, your expense management, travel, all the different elements and verticals of the office of the CFO technology,
Right.
you're going to see AI agent applications across all of those tools,
That's
right?
right.
I'm already starting to see it in a lot of the credit card expense management, AP side, the AR sides, the fixed asset sides, the ERPs, the budgeting and plannings, the automation. You're going to see a whole nother level of AI that is specific to the tool itself, and it's going to be gatekeeped. So for you to leverage our AI in this, you got to be part of our software. So we're going to get back to where software in the office of the CFO and the agents in and of themselves are working in silos, right?
That's right.
You may have your credit card, your AP agent deployed inside of your AP tool. But how's that speaking to your AI bookkeeping tool that you have in your ERP? Right? Or you may have your Agentic junior FP&A analyst in your FP&A software, but how's that talking to your depreciation person? So I think a year from now, we're going to have a great prevalence of AI agentic tools inside of these verticals of the office of the CFO, but it's also going to create isolated data where it's like, how's this agent going to communicate with this agent to communicate with that data, right? The best way to avoid that, again, is start with your strategy, right? Start with the strategy, the tactics, the metrics, the milestone, and the execution of what you're looking to have. That's where I see the vision of next year. 12 months from now, when we go back to this conversation and we start at this point, you're going to see AI in every vertical, agentic AI in every vertical of the office of the CFO, from ERPs all the way through automation and FP&A and all the tools that we have to govern.
All right. That's a great conversation. Thank you, Chris. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, man. Always appreciate it. And if you're watching this and you made it to here, thank you guys for your time. I love this conversation. If you have any questions, clarifications, reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn. There's not an AI bot that manages my LinkedIn. So connect with me, follow me, shoot me a question. Happy to help. And then also, if you're thinking about how you want to start in that first step of tackling that AI strategy element, and you're a CFO or finance professional, highly recommend check out ChatFin. Ashok and his team, Ashok is doing great work. They have great use cases. They'll get you on the right road, and they'll get you the right wins and bring the right value to your organization to get down this AI strategy and have a scalable, repeatable, and value-added process. So definitely highly make sure to check out ChatFin.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for that.